Today, we're going to cover a pretty fun topic. I'm going to provide you with a top 10 list of my favorite purchased gaming accessories. You know that there is a certain type of personality that gets into board games who they actually probably enjoy organizing, optimizing, accessorizing their games at least as much as playing them. And I would say that I probably do fall into that camp. Today's list, though, is going to be of 10 purchased board game accessories, differentiating it from the list of improvised accessories I made, and also the list of 3D printed accessories that I made. This list will be ordered from common and most obvious to the most fun and interesting. And I will put links to everything that I can find again in the description. My honorable mention is something that I haven't actually used for. I just ordered this because I was looking at some different accessories for solo role playing. I realized that I have a small table, and it's just a regular card table, and laying out a bunch of aids, a bunch of play aids, is impractical for me. They don't fit. So I decided to get this. Now, two things struck me. First of all, you've got Cthulhu with a Harry Potter font that lets you know this was definitely designed in China. The other thing is that I should have already had one of these. I always print board game aids, and then I have to find space for them on the table. I might put them on a little paper tray to keep it, but then I have to print it on cardstock, which I am running low on because not every kind of cardstock will fit through my printer. So I should have had one of these a long time ago. Anyway, honorable mention because I actually haven't put it through the paces yet. But this was $20 on Amazon. I would say don't pay more than that because even though it looks fancier than the other ones, it is still the same, just Trapper Keeper material. I thought maybe it was going to be pleather. I didn't really read the description, so that's on me. But now you know this is not pleather. This is the same as the $20 Trapper Keeper style of dungeon master screens. Okay, so on to number 10. My first actual favorite board game accessory is the 3D printer. It is actually by far the best board game accessory, except that it's more of a board game accessory generator than it is a board game accessory itself. And I already made a dedicated list of my favorite 3D printed board game accessories. Printing these makes them practically free. I don't think that you have to make too many of these before you have justified, you've entirely paid off the purchase of your 3D printer. And especially like I printed board game terrain, that stuff, or wargaming terrain, that stuff is really expensive, and easily I printed off way more than my actual printer cost. And the filament is cheap too. I'm talking about filament, PLA filament printers. You don't have to have a resin printer unless you want to make really nice minis. I still print minis. I just have to do ones that aren't as detailed. 3D printers are getting to be cheap and reliable, and while the world is getting more expensive and unstable. And so though it's still a little bit hobbyist, you still have to put a little bit into it. Like I built mine. I put a few pieces together. I think it's time to reconsider whether or not you want to potentially get one. My number 9 favorite purchased board game accessory is extra dice. Yeah, you have a bunch of dice. But do you have enough dice? When you have a lot, you can color code them for the character. You can use 10 dice of one color for the enemy and another color for your character. You can leave dice in a game if you want, which I have done when I was playing 4AD a lot. Conversely, you have a place to put extra dice when you get them in games. You know, you can get them in different form factors for different scenarios. I use extra dice all the time. Very cheap, very boring. I might actually have too many dice, but it's one of those products where you can buy 10 sets for the same cost as buying one. But honestly, a good board game accessory investment. My number 8 board game accessory that I purchased is cubes. Improvised. It's like peanuts and mixed nuts containers. I use these for so many things. But the purchase, cubes. Some games don't give you enough cubes. Some games that don't have cubes should have cubes. I don't like finding tokens and then putting them down and then prying them up off of slick surfaces. Cubes are easy to see, easy to grab. If a game has statuses, I will use these instead of the tokens. Green usually means poisoned. Red means wounded or bleeding. Instead of constantly shuffling and wearing down those initiative cards in Eon's End, I marked initiative order on some cubes, and I just put them in a cup and blind draw them. Very convenient. Not very exciting, but cheap and so practical. I actually keep this container underneath my board game table. Cubes. My number 7 purchased board game accessory is one that you will probably have seen if you watch the Dungeon Dive, and that is a big card holder. Hold It game card organizer. You see it here, currently set up for my solo RPGing, so it can be used for solo RPGs. It organizes my various Oracle decks, my Venture Crafter deck, my Game Master's Apprentice deck that has all sorts of Oracle stuff on it, my Tarot deck with the meanings already on it. That's very useful. If you have a small table like I do, and you like to play dungeon crawlers with a deck for treasure, magic treasure, weapons, armor, vermin monsters, minion monsters, boss monsters, room descriptions, traps, and which also has a big dungeon that you need to build that fills your table. This thing becomes essential. It puts a bunch of decks of cards in the same amount of space as 4 decks of cards. Exciting? Maybe a little. Useful? A lot. My number 6 purchased accessory favorite are tackle boxes. Now we're getting into the fun stuff. If you play games with a lot of tokens, you can spend 3 or 4 hours taking them out of baggies and then twice that amount of time after the game putting them back in. Or you can get some of these cheap flambeau, Plano, or bead boxes. I keep these things, as you can see, in all sorts of sizes. I like the kind that have the adjustable chambers so that you can perfectly fit your tokens, keep them nice and secure and separated. As unassuming as these look, for me, these are the most fun part of unboxing and organizing a new game. Oh, the potential for organization. It's like an empty, pristine spreadsheet, just a grid full of possibilities. My number 5 most favorite purchase accessory is one where you can really display your own taste and personality, and that is standees. Certain things that you buy for board games are an investment. Generic standees are one of those things. If you choose the right ones, you can use them for all sorts of games. These are actually made for Dungeon Universalis, the ultimate dungeon crawler. But Dungeon Universalis has consciously stayed generic, so really these will work for any number of fantasy games. You use them for RPGs, you can use them for skirmish war games, you can use them for dungeon crawlers, you can that's it. That's what you can use them for. Um, but that is a lot because that's a lot of gaming that you can do with generic materials, but specific rule sets. Freighting every game across the ocean seems like it's going to become untenable. I love being able to hop on Drive Through RPG, pick up an entirely new game, pair it with my standees, my battle mat, my 3D printed terrain, the dice that I showed you, etc., etc. And I've got an entirely new game for whatever the instructions cost. Now, one thing that I did with these was that because they're numbered and they are not, and it's important to keep them in that order for playing Dungeon Universalis, but they are not in alphabetical order in their numbering. So I had to make my own little table of contents for them. An investment. But my number 4 favorite purchased game accessory is where we really get elite. Color coding your standee bases. These work so much better than most of the bases included in most games that don't pinch. I've only ever seen those where they completely fall off or they have a groove in the center that keeps them in, and the groove damages the standee. These, if you are careful, don't damage the standee, and they hold on very securely. And they pair up with your dice. So you can keep your tracking dice or your rolling dice and know exactly which standee they are paired with. You will never get confused and move the wrong standee again. That's not true. I still do that, but I do it significantly less. Now, my number 3 favorite purchased game accessory, I should not have put these away because it pairs wonderfully with them. And those are health dials. I mean, if you're using them with a standee, they're probably health dials. And you can, once again, color code to make sure that you always know exactly which character is which. But they have all sorts of uses in games and can really save a lot of space from tracks. I almost will never use a track unless it gives some other sort of information because they just take up so much space that could be done. Now, these are very big, but with something like this. Now, these are actually my overflow dials. These are my primary dials. So these are the ones that I use with For Against Darkness and games like it. And then you can see that I put my extra dials that I get out of games with it. These are the ones that come with Catharsis that are awesome. They have a 3rd number up there for tracking something. I also 3D printed these stands so that these become even more space efficient by allowing you to stand them up. And then just adjust as you play. Yeah, I use these health dials all the time. These are another one of my game supplies that has a permanent place beneath my game table because they're just so useful. The simplicity of my number 2 favorite purchased board game accessory It's probably going to surprise you, but I use these all the time, and they really make gameplay a lot smoother. It had a lot more impact than I thought it was going to. And those are pawns. Specifically, I looked up Sorry style pawns, like the Sorry the board game, instead of chess type pawns, because they are so easy to just grab a group of them and move them around. You might know that I am a Marvel United fan. But one thing I am not a fan of is prying up dozens of tokens off of slick, flexible cardstock. And I realize that I sound like I have become one of those infomercial people who can't drink milk out of a carton without dumping it all over themselves. There has to be a better way. So anyway, I looked at custom 3D printed tokens on Etsy for Marvel United, and they were pretty pricey. So I looked around into printing them myself and didn't find any good ones. And then I just realized pawns would work perfectly. And they worked even more perfectly than I had thought. You mess with so many tokens in that game. This speeds it up so much. You can grab a bunch at a time. They don't get knocked around. Like they barely slide. I don't know, maybe it looks like they're sliding, but they barely slide, especially the Sorry kind, because they are so bottom heavy. Now I use these in other games that have pawns that have a less stable weight distribution, like the wooden pawns in Baseball Highlights 2045 or in coin games. Sometimes, if there's enough space on the board, I will even replace these disgusting cubes that I just tried to sell you on.
These disgusting cubes.
With these beautiful pawns. Easy to see, they're easy to grab. I know that it seems like I'm overselling these, but I really surprised myself with how much I have enjoyed owning these pawns. And I don't know how many come in a game of Sorry, but you could probably go to a thrift store and get a set for like $3. These cost me 10, which per pound is one of the more of plastic is one of the more expensive board game accessories I've shown you today. My number one favorite board game purchased accessory. These are my beloved babies, poker chips. Now, I have to admit that things escalated here. I am just another victim of chip theory games. I love the game Hoplomachus Victorum. But what I found, which I did not expect, is that I really do not love knocking around stacks of a heavy hero chip atop a pile of super light plastic basic health chips. So instead of getting the specific Hoplomachus weighted clay chips, I ordered some generic red and blue chips off of Amazon, and I really like them. In fact, I actually loved them. And very soon after I started playing with these, I decided to get a set of chips with denominations. And so now, whenever I have the table space, I enhance my board game experience by using these to track some of the things that I would otherwise use dials or dice for. Sometimes these are actually a little more convenient when you're flipping back and forth one point over and over. Usually they're a little less convenient, but they are so satisfying in a tactile sense. I don't know if any of the sound's going to go through because I don't know how much processing, like noise reduction processing, I'm going to have to run on it, but just the sound. The clack is just delightful, and because I can use them across a bunch of games, they improve a bunch of my games in a way that is difficult to quantify. So this was not super cheap. These also are not super expensive ones, even though they look really nice. I got this tray separately to hold them. I know this is not practical, right? I'm currently in love with the Balatro app. If you have not played Balatro, you might want to give it a try. It is an extremely fun game, only available in digital form. Um, and yet, it can't, no matter how addictive it is, it can't satisfy a lot of the things that I love about board games, because a part of board games is the tactile nature. Pen and paper RPGs with standees. I mean, yes, I could practically play these things as a computer game much more. But this, there's something about doing everything physically and in your imagination that I think brings a feeling of peace instead of a feeling of overstimulation and agitation. If you also feel that way, then I would suggest that you consider getting your hands on some clay poker chips. Now, you don't have to buy them like a whole set at once. They do make little test sets. The price per chip is obviously through the roof, way more, but could keep you from making a mistake. For instance, maybe I would have bought some that are like this, but with denominations, but these are quite dull and I don't like them as much. I find that these are pretty and shiny and I like them a lot. Maybe you would like ceramic chips more. I personally don't. They're light. They are very, very clacky. They don't have that soft feel that feels organic to me. I got this. These are absolutely beautiful. These maybe would have been the choice, but I think buying them in denominations would have been too expensive. Anyway, you can get one of these little tester sample sets, I think is what they're called, poker chip sample set, and dip your toe in and see if it's the sort of thing that maybe you want to buy an entire denomination set for. All right. So I've probably encouraged more than enough materialism today. Now, I'd appreciate you telling me about your favorite board game accessories, especially anything different, anything that you have come up with as a way to improve your game experience that other people haven't thought of. All right. Well, that's it for me for today. I'm Jalen Riker, wishing you a great rest of your day and reminding you to keep playing solo.